the reality of maintaining a healthy body composition and relationship with food is really quite simple, and it's super accessible to most people if they just had the right kinds of information at their fingertips.
It's like when people tell me, I always go back to keto because it always works for me. Well, if you're going back all this time, I guess it kind of doesn't work, right? Unsustainable methods is going to equal unsustainable results. I mean, that's just plain and simple.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Good People, episode 42. Today, I was joined by Susan Niebergall. She is a co-coach in the Inner Circle and has been a trainer in the fitness industry for 20 plus years. In today's episode, Susan and I talked about her start in the fitness industry, all of the fads of fitness that she's seen over her career, the importance of getting comfortable stepping on the scale, and some basic principles for daily movement, nutrition guidelines, and strength training that you can apply right away. Before we begin, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our notifications. We release episodes every Friday, and you don't want to miss them. Enjoy the show. Susan, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. We are the same. We are of the same. What's the term? Is it alma mater? We're under the same alma mater. We went to the same.
Nuh-uh.
Yep.
You're a Duke?
Yeah.
Oh my, go Dukes! Oh my God! Yeah, yep. Go Dukes. We're a whole JMU family. My husband,
really?
Myself, my son. Yeah, all of us.
Can you give me the 30,000 foot view of you, of Susan?
The 30,000 foot view. Well, I went to JMU, graduated a long time ago. But jumping forward in history, because that was a long time ago. In the fitness industry now for 20 years, maybe almost 20 years, I guess, coming from an education background. I got my bachelor's of music education from JMU. So I was a music teacher for a long, long time, was a school counselor, got my master's degree from George Mason University, became a school counselor for most of my teaching career, got certified while I was a teacher, and became a personal trainer at a local gym here. And then built an online business. Actually started my online business from the people at my school, the teachers and the faculty and stuff at my school. I trained them. Did Susan Niebergall Fitness, hired Jordan Syatt as my online coach, and then he and I became partners with the Inner Circle. So that's primarily what my business is now. But I am this typical middle-aged woman who had weight to lose for most of her life and grew up with all the fads and all the things and never could really maintain a weight loss or really be successful until I was in my mid-50s. And when I hired Jordan as my coach. And from that point on, I started understanding what it was and what I needed to do, and all the false beliefs I had for decades, and just turned it all around in my mid-50s. And so like now my whole message is it's never too late to change. Because if someone, an average person like me, can make a lot of changes in her mid-50s and completely change not only how I think, but how I look, how I feel, that anyone can do it. And I feel like there's so many women in particular, middle-aged women, who feel like it's too late. Like, this is how it is. I can't ever lose the weight, blah, blah, blah. And I'm here to tell them, no, you can do it. You can do it. And so that's kind of my soapbox that I stand on and I try to help people with now. That's primarily my role in life.
What are some of those things before that you were doing, and so, what were some of the changing characteristics that made such a big difference for you?
A bunch, actually. I'd gone through a lot of the fads of the whole no fat phase, right? Everything had to be no fat because the fat was making us fat. Went through that. I went through the you can't have carb phase, right? Because carbs make you fat. I did the more exercise is what you need. And don't worry about, just eat healthy. And the biggest and that tied to that was really the biggest thing is I just thought that as long as I ate healthy, I didn't have to worry about how much at all because it was healthy, right? The more I eat of healthy stuff, the better. But I didn't understand that, well, healthy foods have calories too. And basic energy balance is how we lose weight. And I didn't understand that for so long. So I think the whole eating clean, I put that I wore that as a badge of honor, only just really healthy and clean foods is only what I ate. I deprived myself of things. I ate very little to try to lose weight. And back in the day, and I want to say late 80s, early 90s, I did Jenny Craig right when it first came out. And that's that meal plan service. You eat their food and you lose weight. And I did. I lost 50 pounds that way. And on the surface, it's like, wow, that sounds great. But the problem is you don't learn anything. You just eat these little trays of food, which looking back on that now, probably I was eating 1,000 calories total a day. I was hungry all the time, right? And we all know that's not sustainable for any length of time. And it's going to be tough to maintain any kind of loss when you go a restrictive route. And so I fell for that too. I did that whole thing. I didn't maintain 50-pound weight loss. I lost and regained increments of that for decades, right? I didn't know how to maintain it. They didn't really teach you that part. They just got the weight off of you and you felt good about yourself for about 5 minutes until then you realize, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to survive in the real world. I don't know how to do anything but eat these little trays of food, you know? And so I think that was the biggest thing, getting sucked into a program like that, thinking that eating clean is enough. And as I've gotten older, eating healthy, we all want to be healthy with what we eat. But if you're trying to lose weight and you're struggling to lose weight, you need to do more than that. You have to know how much of that you're eating. And not only that, but what I've also learned, and this is really important, I think, is it is about eating the nutrient dense foods. Yes, yes, yes. We all want to do that. But it's also about eating the fun foods, the things that we love, because that's what's going to make this whole thing sustainable, right? If you don't allow yourself to enjoy, like I love chocolate. I have chocolate every day in some way. If I wasn't allowing myself to do that, what's the point of life at this point? I mean, especially at my age. I mean, it's like, I'm going to have chocolate now. I'm sorry. But am I going to overdose on chocolate? Am I going to have a ton of chocolate every day? No. I know how to balance it. And I think that's what was missing for me for so long.
I'm a fitness trainer as well, and I was talking to a client actually today about this exact thing. And she's a Pilates instructor, and she comes to me for some general strength and conditioning to add on top of that throughout the week. And so her and I talk a lot about fitness and the industry, et cetera. And we were specifically talking about movement. We were talking about I'm sure you're very familiar with, it's the cool thing to say right now is outline everybody's muscle imbalances and all of these issues that people have, right?
Yeah.
And we were just talking about how usually trainers mean well, but there's this huge, I hesitate to use the word fear mongering, but it is fear mongering of trainers who say things to scare clients, to make them feel like they need the trainer to fix all of their problems. And I would even say that nutrition is probably even more riddled with that sort of thinking because of all of the reasons. You should get a shirt that says I survived X amount of fad diets, because it's like there's so many people who have gone through that exact same thing where they try one thing and it works, and then it doesn't last, and then they try the next thing and it works, and then it doesn't last. And what you're saying and what you've gone through and what people who have a good grasp of this understand is that the reality of maintaining a healthy body composition and relationship with food is really quite simple, and it's super accessible to most people if they just had the right kinds of information at their fingertips, and were able to apply that to their own life.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about the basic stuff. It's very uncomplicated, as you said, but there are people out there that want to complicate it to the point where you have to rely on them and their product, because probably they're pushing a product to finally lose the weight that you could never lose before. Um, and it's like when people tell me, I always go back to keto because it always works for me. Well, if you're going back all this time, I guess it kind of doesn't work, right? Because what's the good of losing weight if you can't keep it off? It makes no sense. And I think a good way to look at it is thinking unsustainable methods is going to equal unsustainable results. I mean, that's just plain and simple. The boring stuff is what works. It doesn't sell, though. It doesn't sell. And there are people, and I'm sure you get this too, that reach out all the time saying, I only can lose weight when I eat 1,100 calories. That's the only time I can lose weight. And I have to push back and I say, here's the thing. You're probably very successful temporarily with 1,100 calories because there's so few calories. You have to plan. You have to organize. You have to structure your day so much so you don't go over this 1,100 number that you seem to think you have to do. Whereas when you have more calories on board, you don't plan as much. You have more to eat. You just go here, you do this, you do that. You're a lot less likely to put in the same kind of effort when you have more calories available to you. And I think that's part of the issue. Not to mention that somebody that's eating 1,100 calories, you'll be able to do that for just a certain amount of time. At some point, you're going to start nibbling over here, grabbing a little bit over there. Then that leads to, I deserve this weekend off. I was so good this week. I deserve this weekend. And so then you just party hard and have a great time on the weekend. And now you're back to where you started, square one. You're just doing the same cycle over and over again, because who can keep that up for any length of time? I mean, nobody, right? And I think when people tell me, I can't lose weight with any more calories than 1,100, I think it's mostly because they stop paying such close attention to what they're eating anymore. They're eating more calories than they need. They think they're eating 1,500, but guess what? You're not. You're eating a whole lot more because, you went out to dinner twice during the week and you're estimating calories. You're not weighing all your food. You're weighing some of it, but not all of it. You're guessing. You have nibbles and grazes throughout the day, all of those things, right? So you're not really on top of it as much as maybe when you have to be at 1,100 because, I mean, there's so few calories, you're going to have to plan. It forces you to plan.
I'm interested a little bit more in your own personal journey with fitness. So could you take me through like a rough summary of the evolution of when you started getting interested in fitness and how it's sort of changed over the years?
Yeah. I mean, you can take the clock all the way back to the 80s when I was, I had graduated from JMU actually, probably in the late 80s. I did jazzercise. That was like probably one of the first things I ever did. I don't have a lot of memories about it other than I remember it being in a church basement, and it was stuff that made me totally uncomfortable. I didn't want to do any of that, but it was like the thing back then. So I had to try it. A lot of dancey kind of stuff, movement, and I didn't like it at all, but I just went. But that's where it started. And then I joined a gym after I got married and went to classes, right? I just went to aerobics classes where they had all, step aerobics or whatever. And then the end with 10 minutes of light weights, whatever. I did a lot of that. That got me back into the gym a lot because the community was really good. The class and the instructor I went to, I loved. And so it was nice meeting people and all that. But I could see the free weight area over in the distance and kept watching what was going on over there. And I thought, I think it would be fun to try something over there. Didn't know what I was doing, so hired a trainer. And I worked with him, for a while. I don't know if I saw a lot. I got stronger. I don't know if I saw a ton of visible results. He took me up to my pregnancy, actually. I worked out with him maybe 2 days before I gave birth to my son, so he helped a lot. But that's where it first started. And then, I switched gyms and I would hire trainers at all the gyms that I went to, all of that stuff, and just started becoming a gym rat. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I had one trainer in particular that really changed. He brought kind of a nutrition plan to the table. None of the other trainers ever did, but he was the first person to ever start talking to me about nutrition. And so I mean, it wasn't in great detail, but it started opening my eyes a little bit. And then eventually I got certified myself because I just loved it. I was a school counselor, talked to people for a living, which is great. You have to do that as a trainer, right? That was already in place. I already knew how to do that. The psychology piece, I already knew that. It was just learning more technical stuff for the training piece. So I got certified while I was still a school counselor and just got a part-time gig at a gym. So after school, I would go to that gym twice a week and they would load me with clients, 30-minute sessions. I would do maybe 4 or 5 each time I was there, and got my basic hands-on training there. And a great experience that was. And then I moved to a private training company and I retired, worked more for them. Then I didn't like the direction they were going. So I just did group training at my school that I retired from for the staff, everybody after school. Brought in a partner that grew to be pretty big. And that's kind of how Susan Niebergall Fitness was born, through that. Um, Started the whole online thing. Jordan helped me really construct my online business and get that going. Was a member of his inner circle from the get-go when he first started it. And then we decided to partner up and do it together. And so that's kind of my trajectory, is now more inner circle right now than private one-on-ones. Although I'm thinking I would like to do maybe some local one-on-one training, live training, just a couple people, just, to get back into the in-person thing, which I really enjoyed. But being able to go online, I can help more people too. So it's kind of, a give and take kind of scenario. But that's how I've kind of come through this industry, and then learning everything that I've learned since Jordan was my coach, and he still is. He writes all my programming, everything. He's taking me up to my hip replacement surgery next month. So he still writes everything for me. But when I first hired him back in my mid-50s and learning just from him the basic stuff about nutrition and scale fluctuations and stuff that when I grew up, if the scale went up, that was bad. If it went down, that was good. That's all I knew, but now I understand why the scale might spike up one day when your nutrition hasn't changed. I didn't understand any of that. But once I grasped all that and really learned from him, oh my goodness, everything changed. And so I changed, how I thought changed, how I looked changed, built a lot of muscle, did a lot of things. And now I'm like, well, my God, if I can do it, anybody my age can do it. It's not an age thing. I used to think it was an age thing for me too, but it's not. So that kind of brings me back to now. What I want to do is just to get the word out there to all the middle-aged women. Look, you can do this at any age. You can turn it around. That's the cool thing, right? It's never too late to make any change.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. And I think too, I just had a lady reach out to us the other day, and she had inquired about talking to me. And then I was working with clients for a couple hours, and so I didn't see it. But then when I had finally gotten to the message, she had sent a second message, which read something along the lines of, hey, no need to contact me anymore. I have a disability. She wasn't specific with it, but I just don't think that the gym is going to be right for me. And I messaged her back and was like, hey, we help people with disabilities, injuries, leading up to surgeries all the time. If it's still worth it for you, I would love to chat with you. And, whether or not it works out, I think you'll enjoy at least seeing if we could make something work. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, she was like, no, it's okay. I'll reach out if I feel ready. But not just age, but I feel like fitness in general, it's just people don't realize how accessible it is at whatever level, right? It doesn't matter if you are older, young, fully abled, or disabled. It's something that you have the ability to improve, and you probably don't realize if you don't work out how much of an impact it's going to have on your life. So I just wanted to add that in there too.
Yeah. And your life and your longevity from here moving forward. Right. And to your point, people don't understand the power in just walking every day, just making sure you're getting out and moving your body in some way every single day. There's so much research that shows the benefits of just doing that. Right. And when you start doing that and you start feeling better about yourself and physically, then maybe you're ready to look more closely at your nutrition. You know what I mean? And maybe dial that in a little bit if you want to, or whatever. But I mean, it's just snowballs from there, and it's one of the most underrated forms of exercise. I think a lot of people take the attitude of why bother? It's just a walk. Like, I just walk my dog. Well, I wish I had a dog to walk. That would be great. I wish I did. It would make me get outside and walk. I walk in here, do what I do, other forms of movement too. But yeah, I mean, I think people overlook just simple things and how beneficial that they can be.
Yeah. When you are working with a client, they come to you and you're laying a foundation for them. Are there any specific pillars that you like to talk about on day one with people on what they should be starting to address?
It's going to be really individual depending on the person and where they're at. There are some people that are ready to change it all. Like, they can keep all the plates spinning. They're really good at that kind of thing. They want to hop in and just go. They want to get their nutrition dialed in. They want to track their calories. They want to do the protein. They want to check on fiber, and they want to work out. They want to lift weights 3 days or 4 days a week. They want to do it all. Great. For that person, yeah, I would set them up with a nutrition plan based on if they want to lose weight, build muscle, whatever it is, tracking calories and protein and fiber, and then set them up with a training plan 3 to 4 days a week, and then also reminding them daily movement steps, whatever. If you're a step counter, cool. If you're not, just whatever kind of movement works for you. But there are other people that's like, oh, Lord, that's a lot to change, and I think a lot of people fall into that, especially people my age. It would be overwhelming. And when it gets that overwhelming, nothing happens, right? It's paralysis. So I would tell someone, we can focus on one or two things. We'll do one or two pillars at a time. And if it's one, I always say start with walking. Get that to the point where it's your daily non-negotiable. I don't care how long, I don't care how fast, you just get out there and go. And oddly, what happens is it becomes longer, especially if the weather's nicer. Maybe they'll go outside for a little bit longer. They'll listen to a podcast, whatever it is. But a lot of times I'll have them start just with that. If they want to take on a nutrition thing with their walking, I'll say, you know what? Let's start focusing on protein at every meal. Let's just start with that. Because oddly enough, protein is a foreign concept for a lot of people, especially in middle age. It's like they've never thought of protein separately. They've never tracked it. They have no idea how much protein is in any kind, 4 ounces of chicken. They have no idea. So let's start measure it. Weigh that piece of chicken. Let's see how much protein's in it. Let's learn about protein. Stick with protein. So some people, walking and focusing on protein is a great place to start. Some people are like, man, I want to change it all. I'm ready to change it all. And even this with nutrition, here's one step back even. I'll tell some people to get out a pad of paper and pencil. Forget your computer, forget your phone. It's old school paper, pencil. Keep it in the kitchen, and every single time that you go in there and you put something in your mouth, you write it down on that piece of paper. Whether it's a bite of something, whether it's I had lunch and my lunch was a sandwich and blah, 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 whatever it is. I had a cup of coffee. I drank some water. I had a handful of chips, whatever it is, you write it down. You don't weigh it or measure it. You just write it down. And all of a sudden you start accumulating this long list of things that you put in your mouth every day. And when people see this visual, it's like, oh my God, had no idea I was putting that much food in my mouth every single day. It's an eye opener. And the cool thing is when you handwrite it, it sticks in your brain more. There's all kinds of research to back that up, as opposed to we aimlessly type on our phone and our computer all day long. That will mean nothing if you just enter something and just move on. But when you have to take time to write it on that piece of paper, it's going to stick in your brain more. And now you're looking at this list going, oh my God. So you can start making changes just from this list. I'm not going to go grab those 2 handfuls of chips tomorrow like I grabbed today. Little things like that, because as you know, you have to be honestly aware of what you're consuming. I mean, we all think we're consuming less than we do, and we've got to start with a basic honest awareness of everything that we consume in a day. And this is a great way to start. It's a great way for someone who's really hesitant to start tracking and thinking it's going to be cumbersome and all this stuff. Okay, don't go there yet. Start here. Start with that. Let's see how much you're consuming every single day, just on a piece of paper. And I have people do that for weeks, and the list gets shorter. That's what's fascinating about that. You see their list get shorter because now they're cutting out all these extra little things, the extra latte, the extra handful of this, a handful of that. And all of a sudden, they start seeing the scales start to move a little bit just from little bitty changes, So it's a cool thing to have. And I'm a real stickler about paper and pencil for this.
I think that's a good strategy. And I sort of do something similar when I'm meeting with people who are working on the nutrition side of things. Something that I appreciate about what you're saying is that it's a very slow, methodical process that I'm always so honest about people when they come in, that where you said like the not sexy stuff doesn't sell. I'm very honest about that. I'm like, hey, this is going to be probably one of the harder things that you've ever done, but it's going to be super worth it. And I'm going to help you, and I believe in you, and you can do it.
Yeah.
And I always, after you build a relationship with somebody, I don't say this on day one, but after about a month of training, we've usually come to this mutual agreement that the original timeline that the person came in and said, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 3 months is out the window. They understand that that is not going to take place. But what you get is this cool thing, which is what you're describing, where people just slowly start to become a little bit more attuned to the things that they're doing. And oftentimes I find that people just make the changes on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in part we have to do a lot of education, and I don't think people are as educated sometimes as we say in regards to the nuanced stuff like protein and how your body responds to certain amounts of protein, and how much you need, and giving somebody their macronutrient profile or whatever. That is our job, to give them some of those nuanced things. But for the most part, I think if you ask people, they know that to lose fat, they should exercise more and eat less for the most part, right? But I think what you're saying is right on, and I just wish more people, and I hope people listening can hear this, is that these things that you want to accomplish, whether it's a lower body or a better body composition, or a lower body fat, or more muscle, are super, super attainable to you right now. You just need to realize that it's going to take some time, and that's okay. And you can't give up when you feel frustrated with it, because the reason you give up is the reason why you don't have of those things in the first place.
Yeah. You got to stop quitting when the going gets tough, and I think that's a big issue with especially people that have gone through the decades of crap that we all at my age went through, and believing I mean, it's hard because we will give something a week. Oh yeah, it doesn't work. I'm off to something else. So they're program hopping, they're whatever hopping, and they don't give anything enough time to work. And at the slightest little frustration, the slightest little turn or struggle, they're just like, see, it doesn't work, instead of, no, you know what? If you just keep doing what you're doing, just keep going, trust it, and hang with it a little bit longer, you'll see. You'll see it will start to work. It's just we set these unrealistic expectations in our head, and I think those are killers. And then those expectations, like I should be losing weight faster. The should be's. The should be's are killers, There's no should be's. I only lost. Someone I saw on a post just today said, I only lost, what was it, 2 kilograms this month. So kilograms, what's that, 4 something
4.4,
pounds?
that's 4.4.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
in
a
a
weightlifting
month.
coach, so all of my weightlifting is done in, I've got a 2.2 kilogram to pound calculator in my brain that just
I
fires
love it.
automatically.
I love it. Well, this person was disappointed that they only, and I'll put that in quotes, lost 4 kilograms in a month. And I'm like, 2 kilograms in a month. Are you kidding me? That's phenomenal for the month. That is nice, sustainable weight loss. And this person wasn't good enough, and that's when people throw in the towel, and because they start letting, and this is a big one for me, they start allowing emotion to wake up and start in their head, right? Chatting. You screwed up. You're not doing this right. It's not happening fast enough. Something's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then they acquiesce to all the emotions telling them to quit, emotions telling them to try something else, and they do it. Instead of logic, which we all have logic voices in our head, but for a lot of people, logic voices are asleep in the back. They need to be wide awake and telling you, you know what? Don't worry that the scale spiked. You didn't eat 5,000 calories over your maintenance yesterday. You just had a few extra carbs. You're retaining some water. It's going to work itself out. That's the logic voices that we don't tend to retrieve in our brain. We allow emotion to now tell us what to do. And my analogy for this whole thing is when you're in a car, the driver of that car, it's their responsibility to get you from point A to point B. And if we have a weight loss car, the driver's nutrition. If your nutrition's not in check, you ain't losing anything, right? So nutrition drives the weight loss car. Training is the passenger of that weight loss car. Training is the dude riding shotgun with the map, helping you get to where you want to be, but it's not training's responsibility to get you to your weight loss goal. It's nutrition's job as the driver. But then we have emotion in the back seat. And emotion is the one going, turn left, turn left, turn left, turn left. It's shorter this way. This is a shortcut. Turn left. You screwed up. You need to go down this way. And so you turn left. And now you're lost. You're on this road. You have no idea where you are. You're mad. Nothing's working. You have to backtrack all the way back to the main road because you listened to emotion when you knew all along you shouldn't have listened. You should have gone straight. You knew that deep down in your gut, but you let emotion talk you into turning left and you got lost. And then you had to backtrack and come back to that main road. And this is how this scenario plays out for a lot of people. It's when we allow emotion to get involved and now dictate what we do. And that's a huge mindset shift. I mean, it's huge. It's not easy. And I feel like it takes a lot of practice. It's almost a skill to learn again, and I think it takes a lot of practice, and you're not going to be successful all the time. Just like when you try anything new, you're going to have some days where you do great with it and some days where you don't, but that's part of the learning process.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. It definitely is a skill that you have to practice. And I actually use a very specific framework or dialogue whenever I feel like quitting something. This can be I usually explain this to clients when it's in regards to weight loss or strength gain, or, I personally don't, I'm fortunate that I love working out and eating healthy. So this isn't something that I necessarily struggle with, but this has definitely happened with this podcast before. Anytime you feel like you want to quit, do the same thing. Just use logic. Think about the logical conclusion of where that ends up. I know what it's like to not have a podcast. That's why I started a podcast, because I did not like not having a podcast. And so if I quit, I'm going to be right in that same place that I was when I decided that I wanted to do this. And so using logic, the only conclusion that I can come to is I need to persevere and stick it out. Yep. And eventually I'll get over this rut or whatever that I'm in. The same thing can be applied to weight loss. You know what it's like to be at the certain body fat or weight, or not have the fitness level that you want, which is why that you decided to start this in the first place. So if you quit, you're going to be maybe not necessarily back where you are right away, right? This is a progression that needs to take place over the course of your life. But, if you follow the quitting to the logical conclusion, you're not going to get the thing that you said you wanted to. And for the same reason you said, what you're doing is working deep down. You just need to stick it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be willing to put your feet down and tell yourself, shut up. I'm not going to do that. I think I tell people when you step on the scale and you see it spiked up and you're frustrated because you've been perfect with your nutrition most of the week, and all of a sudden, for some random reason, the scale decided to spike. And we could talk about all different reasons why the scale does that. People saying, well, the scale's fickle. No, it's not fickle. It actually is probably a very good measuring tool, as it measures all of you. It doesn't measure just fat. It measures everything: fat, liquid, organs, bones, tissue. I mean, everything. But immediately when the scale goes up, we think it's measuring fat only. And I think practicing telling yourself, no, wait a minute. I didn't eat 5,000 calories last night, over my maintenance, because that's how you'd probably gain a pound or so of fat. I just went out and had a couple pieces of pizza and a beer, you know, I'm full. I'm really full, or whatever it is, I'm retaining water. I still have content in my stomach. This is why the scale spiked up. And I ate late on top of that. So working your way through logical reasons as to why this is happening, as opposed to letting emotion go, oh my God, I gained 3 pounds of fat overnight. No, you didn't. It doesn't work that way. God help you if you do. I mean, holy smokes, the amount that you must have eaten the night before would be like, I can't even imagine it. But I can relate to all of that, though, because I used to think the same thing, because when we grew up, the scale went up. That was a bad thing. When the scale went down, that was a good thing. There was no nuance to it. We didn't understand that. And that's why, for me, sitting in the doctor's office waiting room was the most stressful event ever, because you knew when you go behind the door, you're stepping on that scale. It's the first thing they do, right? And especially back in the day, now they have all these digital scales, but back in the day, the type I'm probably talking about, the old school ones with the big bar that you move the thing down and it balances, and you step on that thing and they move the big chunk bar down, and then they have to move the little bar, and they keep going and they keep going and they keep going. And you're screaming in your inside going, stop. I just remember those days and how horrible they were, because I didn't understand what any of those numbers truly meant. I put too much value in what that number meant to me as a person, as a success or a failure. If the scale went up, I was a failure. If the scale went down, I was a success. I wasn't educated. But now, like your generation, you guys are so much more educated about this stuff than our generation was at your age, right? And I think every generation has a leg up. I have a leg up on my parents' generation. I mean, we all have a leg up on the one that came before us. So it's great that hopefully when you guys are my age, you won't be dealing with these things, maybe other things, but maybe not these kinds of things that we didn't know, when I was growing up.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good grasp on my generation's understanding. I'd like to think that, like you say, it's better, and it's just hard to tell because of social media. It's like, I'm a
Yeah.
fitness trainer. I follow lots of fitness trainers. I
Yeah.
consume fitness content all day, every day, and so I'm just riddled. I just assume this is something everybody knows, but at some level, that's probably not true. Like my fiance, for example, she is not a fitness person. She works out weekly because she has to live longer. She doesn't enjoy a single second of it. She just does it anyways.
Yeah.
But so, I think for her, for example, she has me as almost an educational source to ask questions to, but people that are in that same boat maybe don't have the same level of resources available to them. I guess my question is, why do you think that so many people struggle to understand the realities of the scale?
I don't. That's a tough question, because I think it is generational for a lot of people. I think if you could sample people, you would definitely see that an older crowd will struggle with it, I think, more, just because of what I said. We have decades. When you're my age, you're talking decades. and that's an unfair advantage in something like this, because there's a lot of experience there. So a lot of the scale going up is bad, going down is good in your brain for 30, 40 years. That doesn't go away. That's not going to go away completely. It doesn't for me, even though I know all of this now. When I step on the scale, I still step on the scale every day, because I keep tabs on my maintenance. I'm in a maintenance range. I just keep tabs on it. And the number doesn't mean anything to me anymore. But when it goes up, I still get that initial kick in the gut. It
Yeah, I'm
still
the same.
happens to me. But the difference is I'm educated now. So I don't let emotion now take me down the left-hand turn thing. I just put it away. I understand what's happening. And I think that's the issue. People just don't understand why the scale fluctuates every single day. And it fluctuates all day. I've often thought about trying just an experiment, just step on the scale like 6 times during a day and just see for myself what my weight does in a given day. It does all kinds of crazy things.
I did this once. So
Did you?
I usually hover around 200 pounds.
Uh-huh.
And I did this once. And this was many, many months ago. I think around then, my maintenance weight for the most part was like 210. It was a little higher than I wanted it to be. So this was right before I took on like a little bit of a fat loss phase. And I weighed myself in the morning. I was 206.
Uh-huh.
And then I went and I worked out, got home, did some work, had a shower, ate a bunch of food. I was 209.
Yeah.
And then at the time, I was training for an ultra marathon.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I went out for a really long run, and when I got back, I was like 201. It was crazy. And I wish that I had taken pictures of the scale because I
Yeah.
would have totally shared that on social media.
Oh,
Because
100%.
man, I like for all of those same reasons. Like imagine I shared this with my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, and she like could not believe. She was like, "Wow, how do you lose all this weight so fast?" I'm like, "This isn't weight. Like, I'm gonna drink a bunch of water, and
Yeah.
I'll be right back to where I was."
Yeah. It's something I think Jordan did this thing where he had a bottle of water, chugged the whole, stepped on the scale before he drank it, chugged a bottle of water and stepped on the scale right after. And of course, the scale's up like a pound plus or whatever it was. But stuff like that is stuff that I think people benefit seeing,
Mhm.
because they don't understand why is the scale going up when I've been perfect with my nutrition. They don't understand that you're probably retaining water. They don't understand that when you go lift heavy weight, that your muscles are probably holding on to water as part of the repair process. That's one thing that I couldn't wrap my head around. Like I didn't understand that was the last one to hit home for me. I understand having content in my stomach still, like I haven't digested everything, carbs and the glycogen and retaining water. People don't understand that most of that fluctuation that you were talking about, and what a great example your day was when you did that, it's water. You're either losing it or you're gaining it. I mean, most of it day to day is water. And then people come back and say, well, how do I know if I'm actually losing weight then? And for people that don't understand, I think that's a legit question if you don't really understand. And that is that you track your progress over time. That's how you know. Because if you're one of these people that will step on the scale every day and watch the fluctuations happen, do it for like 30, 60 days, every single day, just collect the data, move on. You have one of these apps that track it really well. You'll see kind of a bunch of squiggly lines. It'll look like a heart rate monitor probably. And if you have an app that'll give you a trend line, what you will find is that if you've been consistent with hitting your numbers, your trend line is going to it's going to go down slightly. Like it's going to have a downward trend. But if you look at the plotted points on all your weigh-ins, they're all over the place, right? Some are above that line, some are below that line, some are on that line. They're everywhere. But the overall trend over the 30 or 60 days is down. And so learning to do that kind of stuff, I think is super important. And I'm a huge proponent of stepping on the scale. I know there's some people it's probably not beneficial for them to do it for a lot of reasons. But for most people, especially if you have a fear of the scale, the only way you're going to get through that, the only way that the scale's not going to own you is if you step on it every day and start looking at the data, look at what happens, get emotion out of it. That's the only way that's going to happen. Avoiding it's never going to make it easier for you, ever on anything, actually. You have a fear of something, you got to face it, in some way, shape, or form. And I feel that that's how it is with the scale for most people. I know there are probably some severe cases where people probably should stay away from it. I get it. And do it. But for most people, I think it is a useful tool. I think we rely on it too much because that comes from lack of understanding, I think. But it's a pretty accurate measurement, And if you understand what it's measuring, then I think it can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I agree with that 100%. I weigh myself every morning. And what's crazy to me is all the same things that you said exist in me. I still sometimes get on it and I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
fatty, you got to tighten it up. Like
we're human beings.
yeah. But objectively, I know that
Yep.
what's happening. But you're right. And what it saved me is, maybe I do go through a couple. For example, I did all last year. I drank zero alcohol. I didn't drink any alcohol. And I did a podcast actually, and I said how because of my last year, I was going to probably drink a little bit less, but occasionally every once in a while. And I totally went off the rails. I've drank way more days this month than I haven't drank. Okay. Like I probably drank 25 days out of January. All right. And so, for example, say you go through a time, I didn't gain any weight, by the way. I should just mention that if everybody hearing, I didn't gain any weight and I drank 25 days out of January. I should have documented that.
Yeah, that would be good too.
But if I had a couple months where I was going, I was getting a little bit off track. I wasn't paying a lot of attention. You can see that on the scale before anything gets to a position where you don't want to. If you don't weigh yourself but 4 times a year and you go 4 months without paying attention to the food you eat, you're just like, who cares? I'm just going to live my life. And then you finally work up the courage to step on the scale and you've gained 15, 20 pounds. Like if you just have that relationship with the scale to where you know what it says, you're comfortable with the idea that it might go up, it's going to go down. You can catch those things before you get off track, and you live in the middle way, where you're very much between these two extremes of, it's the same line of thinking. Being super rigid and indulging, it's the same exact line of thinking. You need to exist in the middle where it's a balance and you're giving yourself a little bit of leeway, but you stay disciplined for the most part.
Yeah. And, I tell people to think of it this way. If you want to get the most out of weighing yourself, if you weigh yourself once a week, you have in a period of a month, you have 4 data points you're working with. That's it. 4. If you do it once a month, you have 1. If you do it every day, you have 30 or 31 data points, which it will give you more information about what's actually happening, right? I would rather have 30 to 31 data points and be able to use them rather than having 4 data points and try to make heads or tails out of what's going on. And let's say you step on the scale once a week. Let's say you step on the scale every Monday in the morning. Well, what happens if you step on that scale on a Monday and that happens to be a day that the scale spikes? It's one of those days where it just spikes. You're going to think, oh my God, I've lost progress this week. It's not working. But what you've missed is everything that happened during the week prior, right? You missed all the fluctuations. You missed how the trend was actually heading down until you had this little baby spike, and it happened to be on the day that you stepped on the scale. So you don't have the complete picture at all. You're assuming a lot. And I think that's where people get into trouble too. They just do this once a week because they just can't step on it every day. It's too stressful. Well, let's start taking the stress out of it. It's not going to get less stressful by stepping on it once a week, not having all the information that's actually happening. What's going to make it less stressful is if you step on it every day, take the emotion out of it by having a conversation with yourself about what's really happening, what didn't happen. Don't let emotion get a hold of you. Practice this. It's not going to happen if you don't practice that, And it's, I don't want to say it's easier said than done because everything is easier said than done. But it's easy. I know it's easy for me to say that. I know, but I lived it too. So I understand both sides of this. I was that person as well. It's just if you can hold your feet to the fire and get over this scale can be a really valuable tool, and you won't obsess over it. It's just going to be data. It's just going to be something. And some people love all the mathy part, where you can do all the math. I don't want to do all that, but a lot of people love that. And so you could plot and put them in spreadsheets and whatever, all those things that people like to do. Lord knows I'm not one of those people. I just record my weight and then that's it. But I really feel strongly about that. I think people avoid it thinking it's going to get easier. And I just don't think it works that way.
Chatting with you, it seems like there's these 3 things that you focus on. There's the daily movement, there's the nutrition, and then there's the strength training.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we leave some people with some practical advice.
Yep.
This will be sort of like a rapid fire. You just give me your favorites going through each one of these. Let's start with what are some of your favorite daily movement things to give to people you train?
Walking obviously is the easiest one because it's accessible really to everyone. I am a girl though that likes to ride a bike. And I'm the one that likes to ride a bike that goes nowhere. So I'm not a bike outside kind of girl. I'm the bike, like my bike right over here. I think they're great bikes now, and they're fun classes you can do online. I like hopping on there and having someone else tell me what to do. For me to sit on there and pedal for a while wouldn't happen. But if I take a class, it will happen. So movement, I want to make this really clear. It's not about steps. We just talk about it as steps because that's the easiest, lowest barrier entry. It can be anything. It can be a bike. My hip right now loves the elliptical. My hip hates to walk. I don't like walking right now. I'd rather get on the elliptical. It's a lot gentler on my hips. So I'll make a trip to the gym just to get on that elliptical. So it's about movement. So whatever you like to do, I think that's really key. And maybe for your fiance too, it's like find something that you like to do. Maybe it's Zumba, maybe it's whatever. Find that, because that just movement at whatever level is good. I just find people complicate this way too much. Like, well, how many steps does it equal on a bike? Who cares? It's the fact that you moved that day. That's what's important.
Yeah. Whatever. It's a super cliche thing to say, but the best fitness program is the one that works.
Yeah.
Daily movement is the epitome of that. Whatever you
Yeah.
stick to and you do, it's daily. Whatever you do every day for the most part, and you stick with it long term, do
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about strength training. Where do you start people with that?
I'll start people, if I'm working with them personally, I'm going to start them with maybe 3 movements my first session. If they have no experience, we're going to keep it really, really, really basic. I want people to feel successful. I want people to have an easy movement that is not complicated with technique, something that they can move some weight on and feel accomplished, and then build on that. Tons of variations, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, I would probably have somebody do a box squat, for instance. And if you want to translate that, that can mean sit down and stand up. If you want to take it to that level, I would have somebody potentially do a dumbbell row. That's, and I have a certain way of doing it. I don't like having the knee up on the bench. I'll have a 3-point stance, hand on the bench, 2 feet solidly on the ground, and teach them to pull back towards their hips, something that they can probably do pretty easily. And just keep it couple movements. I want them to leave the first session thinking that they could do more and that they're ready to do more. If they're working on their own, like if they're at their house, I'll say start with these 2 things. Squat. So sit in a chair and stand up, and straddle that corner of the chair, sit down, stand up. If that seems really easy, make it a lower chair, or take a box and make it lower to make it a little more challenging, and do push-ups. But if most people can't do a push-up yet, so okay, put your hands on the wall and start with push-up form on hands on the wall, and eventually go down to the kitchen countertop. Your hands are there. And then maybe it goes down to the coffee table and your hands are there, a slow progression like that. So you're starting kind of with body weight. If you're just on your own at home, want to do a couple strength things before you can do a more formalized kind of approach.
That's something that I struggle with, obviously, as a trainer and an advocate of strength training. Obviously, my number one advice, if you can throw all your resources at it, is just go hire a coach and start working with them. Like,
honestly, yes, I say that all the time too. And honestly, it's so much easier to start that way.
Yep, you have all the tools, you have all the information. Yep. They're going to walk you through it.
Yep.
Find one that you like and that teaches you how to do this thing on your own. I think that's a very important part of it as well.
100%.
But I do like your analogy of, you're giving those specific things at home. I like the push-up one. I give the exact same one, from wall to countertop to coffee table to floor.
I have just this pet peeve of knee push-ups, like girl push-ups, whatever dumb name they've given them, just because there's no progression to go from your knees to your toes. You're either on your knees or on your toes. There's no in between. But when you elevate your hands, now you can track your progress too. You can elevate your hands on the wall, and then you're at the countertop, and then, you're slowly bringing your hands down. And so you're also getting used to being in a full push-up position, not with the knees bent, with your body in the full position, in the full plank position, and learning how to keep that in a nice tight position, keeping your elbows at 45 degrees. You're learning how to do all that from a normal position. You can practice that, right? So that as you work your way down to the ground, you're now ready to push off the floor with great form.
Yeah, I do the same progression. I don't love knee push-ups for the exact same reasons.
Yeah.
Let's talk about nutrition. I know we talked about, getting comfortable with the scale. I think that's very important. Tracking your food. You can't avoid tracking your food, but let's give advice for somebody maybe who's been through that. What are some of those non-tracking tips? Like you mentioned, protein with every meal. Give me a couple of those that you would give clients that you're working with.
One thing, and I was just talking to somebody about this today, is focus on making your meals bigger so you cut out the snacks, because we tend to snack a lot. And what people don't understand with snacking is you eat these things that are probably not going to fill you up. You're not going to feel full. And when you don't feel full, you don't feel like you ate a lot, right? It's kind of a normal thing. And when you don't feel like you eat a lot, you go and eat some more because you're still hungry. And pretty soon you've accumulated a lot of calories in snacks. So if you're a snacky person, I would say take some calories and beef up each one of your meals with a little more protein, a little more carbs, whatever. Beef up your meals so that you feel fuller longer and you don't even need snacks. And somebody just sent me a note literally today saying they started doing that and what a difference it made for them. Like they are not snacking at all of a sudden the scale starts to move. Wouldn't you know? I think that's a place that people don't look. I think they're trying to dial back the number of calories in their meals, thinking this is a good idea because I'm trying to lose weight. So I'm going to keep my meal at 300 calories, and that's not enough to keep you feeling full for very long at all. So let's make that 300 calorie meal a 500 calorie meal potentially. And then guess what? You're not going to need that afternoon snack anymore that you probably started to overeat. You had one handful of chips that probably led to another, and everything's light. You don't feel full. So now you're hungry. By the time dinner time comes around, you're like a raving lunatic because you're still really, really hungry. You want to eat everything in sight. It just regulates you more, and I think it's something that someone who's maybe been tracking and doing things, still struggling a little bit, this is a great place to look. And the other place to look for someone like that is your weekends. What do your weekends look like? Because chances are you don't have the reins pulled in as tight on your weekends as you do Monday through Friday for a lot of reasons. We're out running errands, we're doing this, we're eating out, all of these things. But the weekends are one of the first places to look. If you're struggling and you're tracking, you're doing those things and you're still not being successful because you're probably estimating a lot. And, restaurant food's good for a reason. That you go to a restaurant, you don't know who's in the kitchen cooking for you. You don't know if they're doing a little deet deet with the oil or with oil, I mean, you could have a big difference in calories. So it's hard to know how much you're actually eating. That doesn't mean you can't go out, but it just means you need to take that into consideration. How much you go out, the things that you order, and also if a restaurant has calories in the menu, add 25%, and that'll probably get you closer to the reality of where the calories are, because you're not going to get out of a sit down restaurant under 1,000 calories most likely. It's just not going to happen. And to reiterate, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you need to be able to account for it. And if you go over your calories that day, cool, you go over, right? You hop back on track the next day. You don't let that one meal then lends itself to the next meal and the next meal and the next meal, all off track, right? One off track meal is not going to make or break anybody, but it's just awareness. It goes back to being aware.
I'm going to take a really hard turn with this next question, but the name of the show is Good People, and something we like to ask everybody is what they think it means to be a good person.
Wow. What does it mean to be
someone who steps on the scale every day? No,
yeah. No. I think somebody is a good person who, and I kind of draw this from inside of me. I'm a person that wants to help people. Genuinely, I want to help people. I'm not out to make money. I don't care about money. I'm not making very much money. I don't care. I want to help people. My intent is loving, helpful. I think that makes a good person, their intent. And I just feel like, I hate using the words friendly and love, but open to people, open to hearing people, opening to listen, open to listen to people, to be able to give feedback and receive feedback. I think all of these things make someone a good person. Yeah, I mean, all that sounded really cliche, and I'm sorry, but I think
No.
that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think that to hopefully make you feel better, we ask that question to people all the time, and sometimes people just they say the same thing. It's all cliche, but I think that's, at some level, cliches are cliche for a reason, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some truth to what you're saying, and I
Great
definitely
point.
very much jive with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But Susan, thanks very much for doing this. Before we close out, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Just that truly, honestly, truly, it's never too late to change. So please don't let that part of emotion get into your brain, because it's going to do you a disservice. You can change completely your entire life if you want to. So whatever your goals are, doesn't matter. Go after them. Be consistent with whatever it is, and you'll change. Your age has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Very good. Also, plug your stuff. Anybody listening, I want them to check out your stuff, because your social media content is super awesome, and I think more people would be better by seeing it.
Thank you. I'm on Instagram primarily. Susan Niebergall Fitness is where you can find me. I have a pretty extensive YouTube channel, same name, Susan Niebergall Fitness. I haven't been on YouTube in a while, but I'm coming back. I'm going to be documenting my hip replacement stuff leading up to surgery and then post-surgery. So you'll be seeing some more current stuff from me there. I wrote a book called Fit at Any Age. It's Never Too Late. And it's basically about my journey, my story, how I turned it all around, and how it affected all parts of my life, not only just physically, but also my business. And that's on Amazon.
Cool. I'll be sure to link all that stuff below, so if anybody's interested, they can just scroll right down and check it out. But we'll leave it there. And if you're ever in Harrisonburg visiting JMU, we'll grab a beer.
My son is going down there tomorrow.
Oh, really?
For JMU Pep Band alumni. Yeah. They're on Pep Band alumni day at the basketball game. So yeah, I'm not going, but I will let you know that the next time I'm down in Harrisonburg, I will for sure let you know.
That'd be great. Seriously, that'll be awesome. We'll go to you've been to Billy Jack's, I'm sure.
Only once. It wasn't there when it wasn't there when I was there. And I heard that's where the guys when ESPN was down there, game day was down there.
Jonas Brothers.
Yeah. Isn't that where the Jonas Brothers were?
That's where they went. Yep.
Yeah. I would love to go there.
All right, we'll do it.
It's a date.
All right, Susan, thank you very much. You have a great rest of your night, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Joel. Take care.
Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Good People. Make sure you check out the show notes below to check out Susan's Instagram and all the content that she puts out. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our notifications so you don't miss our weekly episodes. If while you were listening, you enjoyed it, please send it to someone you love, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.